Hey guys, Dr. Justin Marcagiani here. I get this question all the time. Does insulin block fat burning? We're going to dive into this question here today. So, first off, what is insulin? It's a storage hormone. It actually helps amino acids get into the muscle and heal and recover the muscle. Bodybuilders for a long time have used insulin. But the problem with insulin is if you do too much through food and through carbohydrates, all carbohydrates break down to typically glucose and fructose. If it's a starch, it's primarily glucose. If it's fruit, you'll get a blend of some fructose and glucose. And if it's processed sugar, you're going to get 55-45 fructose sucrose or 55-45 fructose glucose. And so the more processed the carbohydrate, more processed the sugar, you're getting more fructose. The more starchy the food, you're getting more glucose. Now, what your body does with those types of carbohydrates is different. Glucose goes more to the muscle, fructose goes more to the liver. And again, the liver has a smallish storage reservoir. So once it gets full of glycogen, that carbohydrate, that fructose gets stored as fat. And the more fatty the liver gets, the more insulin resistant you get. And so with insulin, one of the things insulin does is high levels of insulin and carbohydrate. Part of the metabolism of fructose is it will increase uric acid, right? You will see with increased uric acid, increased liver enzymes like ALT. So that's a sign of a fatty liver. Now, when your uric acid's elevated, it'll block the CPT1 enzyme, the carnitine palmitoyltransferase 1 enzyme. That is the enzyme that takes carnitine into the mitochondria. So you have the outside of the mitochondria and the inside. And this enzyme called carnitine palmitoyltransferase 1, CPT1, helps activate the carnitine shuttle. It helps take fat from outside, extracellular to intracellular in the mitochondria, where this fat is burned for fuel. And so CPT1 gets knocked down with uric acid. Uric acid is also going to be stimulated through fructose. Fructose will increase insulin resistance. It won't do it directly. It won't impact insulin directly, but it does it through impacting the liver. When you impact the liver and make it more fatty, it activates the JNK enzymes, the junk enzymes, which is going to create inflammation. That's going to create the fatty liver, and it's going to do that by stuffing it full of glycogen and then turning that fructose and turning it into fatty acids. So palmitic acid, typically a lot of times, and so that's going to create insulin resistance. Now, when you have high levels of insulin, that uric acid also decreases endothelial synthase, enos, and that's going to be a vasodilator. That's going to open up your blood vessels. That's going to make it easy for blood to flow. And if your blood's sticky because you're inflamed, you have lots of inflammation, that's going to make it so you have higher blood pressure. Your heart's going to have to pump harder to get your blood into circulation. So when you make your cells sticky, that puts stress on your heart. When you decrease the size of the vessels, then your heart has to pump higher and overcome that high blood pressure. Because essentially, if the blood pressure is 130, 140, 150, to get blood to move, it has to generate that amount of pressure. And so the more narrow the blood vessels are, think of the garden hose outside, right? You're watering the garden, you put your thumb over that. Well, now the water from the outside of the street has to pump high enough to get that out. So now you're putting more stress on your heart. And then you also put more stress on the vasculature because you have more fluid, because the more insulin you have, the more you hold on to sodium. The more sodium you have, the more that carries fluid. And so salt is never the issue. It's the innocent bystander because of the insulin that's happening in the background. And so how insulin impacts fat burning, it's going to decrease hormone-sensitive lipase. Hormone-sensitive lipase mobilizes fatty acids. It takes the fat, the glycerol backbone, the free fatty acid, throws it off. That fatty acid can now be burnt for fuel with hormone-sensitive lipase. With high levels of insulin, you knock down that HSL enzyme, that hormone-sensitive lipase, and now you can't burn it. Also, insulin itself is there to essentially, let's just say, put fatty acids back in the cell. It's there to take glucose and convert it to fat if it's not being used. And so essentially, if you are exercising or moving, your body is going to preferentially burn the sugar, the glucose over fat, because your body's either going to take it and store it or burn it. So it's preferentially saying, we're going to deal with the sugar problem we have, the glucose problem. We're either going to burn it or we're going to store it. And so if you're exercising or you're moving, your body's going to say, oh, no, let's go deal with this glucose thing first. And then once that problem is dealt with, then we can go deal with the fat stuff. And so if we just take a whole bolus of sugar, let's say 10 teaspoons of sugar from high fructose corn syrup to a soda, well, now we got a problem. Now, here's the thing. People don't know, if you look at like your typical blood sugar, like 100 mg per DL, right? And you look at 6 liters of blood in the body, That's about 1 teaspoon of sugar in the whole entire 6 liters of blood. So when you go have a 12-ounce Coke, that's 10 teaspoons. So you literally 10x the amount of blood or the amount of sugar in your blood with just one soda, 12 ounce, not a 20 ounce, but a 12 ounce. And so think about all the stress your body has to do to clear out 90+% of all that fructose in it. It goes through a ton of stress. It's pumping out insulin. It's dumping that stuff into fats. It's maybe trying to get you to burn it. But if you're insulin resistant, maybe you're tired. It's converting some to glycogen, right? It's freaking out to try to get that stuff out of the bloodstream because if it's there, it's creating inflammation. It's creating a fatty liver. It's glycating things and it's making it harder for your body to burn fat. And so preferentially your body rather burn fat. It's a cleaner source. It's like starting a fire with twigs and paper and lighter fluid versus putting a log in the fire. The log is a stable, steady fuel source. There's no up and downs. When you're preferentially burning sugar, guess what? It's up and down all the time. So is your mood because you're on this reactive hypoglycemic roller coaster ride. Hope that makes sense. So does insulin block fat burning? Yes, it's going to do it through uric acid. It's going to do it through the carnitine palmitotransferase enzyme 1, CPT1, and the carnitine shuttle. It's going to block hormone-sensitive lipase. It's going to make it harder to cleave those free fatty acids off, and it's going to be allocating glucose and that sugar as the primary fuel source. When we talk about sugar, you really have sucrose, that's table sugar. That's 50-50 glucose and fructose. And then you have starch, that's primarily glucose. And then for the most part, like your fruit's going to have fructose and glucose in it, but it's going to have fiber to it and nutrients. So it's not going to be the same kind of fructose that we get in processed food. Hope that makes sense. So definitely keep a lot of the fructose and down. And if you're going to do more carbs, make it more starchy carbs. Because your glucose, your body is a lot more forgiving for it, is a lot more reservoirs of use. And it's going to be less inflammatory to the liver and create that fatty liver, which is going to then make you systemically insulin resistant. And again, the marker you want to be at is 25 or less on that ALT liver enzyme marker. That's a good sign that you are not having a fatty liver. Hope that makes sense, guys. If you want to dive in deeper, you want more support on the functional medicine side because you feel like your metabolism and fat burning's off, there'll be a link down below where you can reach out to my team to coordinate and schedule functional medicine consult worldwide. All right, guys, have an awesome day. Take care. Bye.